Hi everyone. So in this video we're going to be talking about 3 very easy to use media studies theorists that you can use in your exam when answering Eduqas style questions. So the first theorist that we're going to talk about is a guy called Stuart Hall, who's a cornerstone theorist in media studies. His theory of stereotyping is so easy that it can be applied to pretty much any text. The beauty of an A2 exam, so this won't apply if you're doing an AS exam, but the beauty of an A2 exam is that you're required to evaluate theory. And what that basically boils down to for me is you are either going to say that a theory that was a fast car, you're going to say that a theory is being reinforced by a media text or is being challenged by a media text. So all you have to do is either look for stereotypes in the media text or look for people who you think could have been stereotyped who weren't stereotyped. Now we're going to delve a little bit more into Hall's theory. Essentially what he says is that stereotypes are where people have been reduced to a series of codes. Now what that means is that people are reduced to very straightforward representations and presented to audiences, and these things are super useful because it allows producers to communicate a lot of information in a very short amount of time. If we take for example a doctor, if we were going to create a doctor stereotype, I'll reduce them to the following codes. They would probably be cast as male, they'd be wearing a white lab coat, and they'd have a stethoscope around their neck. And that tells us everything we need to know about that character. All the basic information is there. This is a medical professional. If we were going to create a nerd stereotype, one of the things I would do, why did I choose to do this next to a dead loud road? One of the things I would do to create a nerd stereotype is I would give the character a very thick set of glasses. I'd put them in a buttoned up shirt right up to his neck, and I'd stick a load of pencils and protractors and rulers in his top pocket. And that tells us everything we need to know about this character. They're not going to be particularly popular with the ladies. They're not going to be particularly sporty. Probably got a lot of interest like Warhammer or chess or all that cool stuff. And that's all we need to know about these characters. Now, if you're presented with a representational question, one of the first things I would be doing is either looking for stereotypes to say this character reinforces Stuart Hall's ideas on stereotypes, or I would be looking for people who could have been stereotyped who weren't. For example, if you got like a male nurse or a female mechanic, that's counter stereotypical and it's something that you can point out in terms of these representations. The second representational theorist that we're going to look at, who I think is particularly easy to apply, is a guy called David Gauntlet. So David Gauntlet provides us with a theory called pick and mix theory that essentially boils down to this. We used to have very traditional representations of gender in our media, but we now have a more diverse range of stars from which we can pick and mix our identities. So what this means was we had like very traditional gender representations. So men would go out to work and earn all the money, women would stay home, look after the kids, look after the household. But he says that now we have much more diverse representations. So you get inverses of that, or counter stereotypes essentially. You get representations of people who are male who present as female. Take for example, no, he's not very popular, but James Charles is a good example of that kind of character. So a male character who wears a lot of female clothing, has female gesture codes. Or you'll get female characters or female people who represent in more masculine ways. Take female MMA fighters like Ronda Rousey, for example, or any WWE star who's a lady. These are all non-traditional or diverse representations of gender. Now all you have to do in a media studies exam when you're looking for representations is either point out that someone is falls into a traditional representation of gender according to David Gauntlet, or that they fall into a more diverse representation of gender. The final theorist we're going to be looking at today is a lady called Lisbeth van Zunen, who I love in terms of media studies exams because she's dead easy to apply. So basically Van Zunen has 2 theories, or 2 parts to a theory. The first theory is about representations of people in a visible way. So in our class we call this spectacle theory. So a spectacle is something to be seen and looked at and beheld, right? Like a firework's a good example of a spectacle because it's just something that you watch. Now Van Zunen says that both male and female bodies are presented in the media as an example of spectacle. So she says that both binary genders have their bodies presented to media audiences as something to look at. But she says the ways in which these bodies are presented vary massively depending on whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. So Van Zunen says that when male bodies are presented to media audiences, they're presented in a strong way. So males are presented as strong characters, physically strong characters to audiences. But she says female bodies are presented in a more sexualized way. And both of these things are spectacle, but they're both presented in obviously different ways depending on your gender. So have a look in your media studies text that you're exploring and have a look for examples of either of them. Van Zunen also talks about male and female behaviours in her theory though, and this is the final part of today's video. So Van Zunen states that the ways in which men and women behave in media texts varies dependent on their gender. So she says that men tend to belong to the world of politics and work, and women tend to belong to the world of the domestic and the home. So what she means by this is that whenever we see male characters, we tend to see them as like working jobs and making decisions, which is what she means by politics. So political decisions about either the household or bigger, more important ideas. She says that when we see women, they're often presented in positions of domesticity, which means that they are raising kids or they're looking after the household. It's very, very closely linked to Gauntlet's theory on traditional gender. And again, all you have to do with any of these theories is have a look at your media text that you're presented with, whether these are the set texts that the exam board are giving you, or whether these are unseen texts, and point out whether they're being reinforced, so you see these theories in action, you see what the theorists saying should happen actually happening, or whether they're being challenged. If you do that, you are then evaluating your media studies texts, and you're likely to get a better grade because you're going through this process of evaluation. And that's it. Now there's obviously loads more theorists that you can talk about, and I'll probably do some videos on them at some point, but these are three that I would absolutely go for straight away in an exam, particularly if you just opened your exam, saw a representational style question and you go into a bit of panic mode like I used to in my exams. These are three that I can always bank on to be able to make points about. So there we go. Those are three very easy theorists that you can talk about in your media studies exam.